Dawn struggled through the blizzard over Echo Mustang Division Sanctuary like a wounded soldier, and Lieutenant Clara May Hollister recognized the fight in it. 3 years since Ironbrand, since hanging upside down with rope burns that still circled her ankle, and she still conducted perimeter checks with military precision. Some habits saved lives. Dusty materialized beside her, scarred flank gleaming despite the weather. The Mustang's eyes held an intelligence no natural horse possessed, the costly gift of Wade's experiments. Clara May's fingers brushed the rough fence wire, checking for breaks with the same care she'd once used disarming explosives. "Perimeter secure," she murmured, voice shifting to the softer tone reserved for horses. "Freedom requires vigilance, doesn't it?" Dusty's ears pricked forward suddenly, focusing toward the northern property line. Clara May followed his gaze, hand instinctively reaching for the knife at her belt. The blood trail wasn't visible until first light broke across the snow. Someone, or something, has left a bloody trail straight to Clara May's sanctuary. After 3 years of hiding from her military past, the experiments she helped create have returned to haunt her. But is it revenge they seek, or something more sinister? What would you do if forced to confront the darkest mistake of your past? Share your thoughts below. If you're intrigued by this tale of redemption, military secrets, and the unbreakable bond between a wounded woman and her equally scarred Mustang, hit that like button and subscribe for the next chapter of this frontier thriller where freedom must be chosen, never imposed. Dawn struggled through the blizzard over Echo Mustang Division Sanctuary like a wounded soldier, and Lieutenant Clara May Hollister recognized the fight in it. 3 years since Ironbrand, since hanging upside down with rope burns that still circled her ankle, and she still conducted perimeter checks with military precision. Some habits saved lives. The fence line disappeared into swirling white, but Clara May's boots found each post unerringly. She'd walked this boundary in darkness, in storms, in the grip of nightmares that followed her into waking. Her gloved fingers tested wire tension methodically. One section, then the next, the repetition a comfort in a world of uncertainties. When the wind died momentarily, she could hear the soft nickering of horses in the barn, 37 survivors like herself. Each bore scars from Ironbrand, some visible, like missing eyes or twisted legs, others buried deeper in fractured minds and shattered trust. Clara May understood both kinds intimately. "Lieutenant Hollister, perimeter secure," she murmured to herself, a habit from her former life that sometimes slipped through her careful control. No breaches detected. Dusty materialized beside her, scarred flank gleaming despite the weather. The gray Mustang's breath created ghostly plumes in the frozen air. Intelligence gleamed in his eyes, the costly gift of Wade's experiments. He'd found her 3 years ago, cut her down when they'd left her to die, led her to freedom. Some debts could never be repaid. Clara May's fingers brushed the rough fence wire, checking for breaks with the same care she'd once used disarming explosives. "Perimeter secure," she repeated, voice shifting to the softer tone reserved for horses. "Freedom requires vigilance, doesn't it?" Dusty's ears pricked forward suddenly, focusing toward the northern property line. Clara May followed his gaze, hand instinctively reaching for the knife at her belt. The blood trail wasn't visible until first light broke across the snow, bright crimson against perfect white. Clara May tracked the blood with a soldier's focus, Dusty moving beside her with unnatural silence for a horse. The trail wound through scrub pine and drifted snow, leading away from her fence line toward neighboring ranchland. Thomas Blackwood's property. She'd never spoken more than 10 words to the man, preferred it that way. The body lay half buried in snow, 20 yards beyond her fence. A rancher by his clothes, throat torn open with savage precision, but it was the wound pattern on his chest that froze Clara May's breath. 3 parallel gashes, each exactly 4 inches apart, edges serrated like saw teeth. "Not wolves," she whispered, crouching to examine the marks without touching them. "Not bears, not natural." Dusty refused to approach, dancing nervously at the perimeter, nostrils flared. Clara May understood his fear. The smell would trigger memories, surgical tables, restraints, pain. She swept the area with tactical efficiency, reading the story written in disturbed snow. The attack had been swift, calculated. The victim had barely struggled. Most telling was what she found half buried beside the body. A military insignia she recognized instantly. Wade's personal mark, used only by his inner circle at Ironbrand. Clara May's fingers trembled as she retrieved it, memories flooding back like ice water. The laboratory walls, the control devices. Wade's voice explaining how they'd improve the animals, make them weapons. Her own voice, to her eternal shame, asking technical questions while ignoring the suffering before her, until she couldn't ignore it anymore, until she'd spoken out, until they'd made an example of her. Her ankle throbbed where the rope had bitten deep. Clara May pocketed the insignia and studied the tracks leading away from the body. Not horse prints, something with claws, walking upright, heading straight for Coyote Bluff. "They've started again," she whispered to Dusty, "and they're heading for town." Clara May moved with urgent precision once back inside her cabin. The false floorboard under her bed came up silently, revealing a military trunk she'd hoped never to open again. Inside lay the evidence of her former life: uniform, documents, the prototype control device she'd stolen during her escape. Her fingers brushed the small metal disc, remembering how it had looked embedded in Shadow's skull, making him both more and less than a horse. "They said you were dead," she murmured, thinking of Dusty's brother, the black Mustang who'd fought the control until the end. "They said the program died with you." Dusty watched from the doorway, understanding more than any natural horse could. Clara May removed a stack of classified documents, schematics for the control devices, reports on the subjects, her own meticulous notes on the program's progress. Before she'd understood what they were really doing. The last item in the trunk was her service pistol. Clara May weighed it in her hand, feeling the familiar balance. 3 years ago, she'd vowed never to fire a weapon again. Some promises couldn't survive contact with reality. On her map of the territory, she traced the path from the murder site to Coyote Bluff. Whatever had killed the rancher was heading straight for the populated area. A test run, perhaps. Wade's methods always included field trials before full deployment. "Marshal Prescott won't believe me," she told Dusty, who nickered softly in response. "But he needs to be warned." Clara May strapped on her gun belt, feeling the weight of it like a ghost limb returning. She pulled on her heaviest coat and tucked the documents and insignia into an inner pocket. The tracks in the snow meant the horror had only begun, she told Dusty as she saddled him. "And it's heading straight for town." The blizzard had eased by the time Clara May reached Coyote Bluff, but few people braved the streets. She tied Dusty outside the marshal's office, noting how the horse positioned himself to watch both directions of the snow-covered Main Street. Always vigilant, always ready. They shared that quality. Marshal Everett Prescott looked up from his desk with surprise when she burst through the door, bringing a swirl of snow and cold air. At 50, the former Union cavalry officer had the weathered face of a man who'd seen too much and expected little good from what remained. Lieutenant Hollister, he acknowledged, using her military title with the faintest hint of respect. Town sees you maybe twice a year. Something must be wrong. Clara May placed the bloodied insignia on his desk. Rancher dead on my northern boundary. Throat torn out. Chest carved open with these. She held her fingers apart, demonstrating the claw spacing. Not any natural predator in these mountains. Prescott examined the insignia without touching it. Military business? Was 3 years ago. Clara May's voice remained steady despite the memories threatening to surface. Government program called Ironbrand. I was part of it until I learned what they were really doing. Which was? Creating weapons, living ones. She met his eyes directly. They experimented on wild Mustangs, enhanced them, then crossbred with wolves, mountain lions, created hybrids with military training. Prescott leaned back, skepticism hardening his features. Miss Hollister, we've had mountain lions take down cattle before, even in this weather. Marshal, have you ever seen a mountain lion that walks on 2 legs and leaves military insignia as calling cards? I've seen desperate women stirring up trouble with wild stories. Whatever you're running from. Clara May yanked up her pant leg, revealing the rope scars circling her ankle. I'm not running anymore, Marshal, and neither can your town. The office door burst open as Thomas Blackwood staggered in, blood streaming from a gash across his shoulder. Tall and broad-shouldered, the rancher's usual stoic expression was replaced by wide-eyed shock. "Something's out there," he gasped, gripping the doorframe for support. "Something I've never seen before." Clara May steadied him toward a chair, while Prescott grabbed bandages from a drawer. Blackwood's gaze lingered on her, recognition dawning. "You're the woman with the horse sanctuary," he said. "The one they say was in the army." "Clara May Hollister," she confirmed, examining his wound with clinical precision. "This wasn't made by any normal predator." "Fast as a cougar, but walked like a man," Blackwood confirmed, wincing as Prescott cleaned the wound. "Eyes reflected light wrong, like mirrors. Never seen anything natural move that way." "Did it make any sounds?" Clara May asked. "Clicks or whistles?" Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "How did you know that?" "Because they're trained to communicate without human words." Clara May met Prescott's gaze over Blackwood's shoulder. "Believe me now, Marshal." Prescott's skepticism had vanished. "Where did you see it, Blackwood?" "East edge of my property. It killed one of my men, then came after me when I investigated." His voice grew harder. "I put 2 rifle rounds in it. Didn't even slow down." Clara May nodded grimly. "The control devices suppress pain, makes them nearly unstoppable in combat." "You seem to know an awful lot about these things, Lieutenant," Blackwood said, studying her with newfound interest. "I helped create them," she answered flatly. "Now I need to help stop them." A distant scream shattered the tension, followed by the sound of breaking glass and panicked shouts from the direction of the general store. "They didn't wait for nightfall," Clara May said, drawing her pistol. "They're already here." They rode through moonlit snow toward the sanctuary, a grim procession. The town attack had been brief but devastating. 2 dead, several injured, and a community left terrified. Clara May led, with Blackwood and Prescott flanking her. None spoke of what they'd witnessed, creatures moving with military precision, communicating through coded sounds, retreating on command when Clara May wounded their leader. The sanctuary loomed ahead, dark and silent, too silent. "They knew where I lived," Clara May said quietly. "This was coordinated." Inside the main barn, she lit a lantern, revealing 37 nervous horses shifting in their stalls. Dusty moved among them, a calming presence. Clara May performed a quick head count, relief washing through her. "All accounted for," she reported, before leading them to her cabin. She spread maps across her table, military efficiency taking over. "They'll come again. Tonight, most likely." Dawn attacks are standard military doctrine, but they know we're alert now. "How many?" Prescott asked. "I counted 4 distinct entities. Given Iron Brand protocols, they'd deploy 6 to 8 for field operations." Blackwood studied her with undisguised curiosity. "You really were part of this, weren't you?" "I designed the control interfaces," she admitted, shame coloring her words. "I thought we were creating reconnaissance assets, not weapons." Before anyone could respond, Dusty's warning neigh pierced the night. Clara May extinguished the lantern immediately. "Movement in the south corner," she whispered. "Don't shoot until you see eyes." "What are we dealing with exactly?" Blackwood asked, rifle ready. "Military experiments, half wolf, half something else, enhanced strength, speed, intelligence." "God Almighty," Prescott muttered. "What kind of army creates such things?" "The kind preparing for enemies they don't understand," Clara May answered grimly. The first creature crashed through the window with unnatural speed, and the night erupted into chaos. Dawn revealed the aftermath: shattered windows, blood-spattered snow, and one dead hybrid creature sprawled on Clara May's cabin floor. They'd fought off the attack, but barely. Thomas Blackwood nursed a gash along his forearm, while Prescott reloaded his revolver with grim determination. By mid-morning, they had gathered in Widow Jenkins's hotel back room in town. Maps covered the table, coffee steamed in thick mugs, and 4 people argued over the best approach to tracking the creatures. "We follow military search protocol," Clara May insisted, placing markers in a grid pattern across the map. "Coordinated teams, systematic coverage, and announce our presence to anything within 5 miles. Blackwood interrupted, sweeping her markers aside. "These mountains don't work that way." Clara May bristled. "These aren't natural animals. They're military assets with tactical training." "Yet they leave tracks," said a new voice. All eyes turned to the Shoshone woman standing in the doorway. Naomi Two Hawks wore practical frontier clothing, but carried herself with unmistakable dignity. Clara May had seen her in town occasionally, trading herbs and healing knowledge. "The snow holds memories," Naomi continued, approaching the map. "My people can read what passed without disturbing what might be watching." Clara May crossed her arms. "This isn't some mystical hunt. We're tracking hybrids with enhanced intelligence and military training." "Yet they leave tracks," Naomi repeated calmly. "All things that walk must touch the earth, Lieutenant." Prescott cleared his throat. "Naomi's tracked mountain lions that outsmarted a dozen Army scouts. I'd listen to her." Clara May's jaw tightened. 3 years of isolation had made her resistant to others' methods, but the attack had proven she couldn't handle this alone. "Fine," she finally said, hand hovering over the map. "We'll try it your way. But if we're walking into a trap, I expect you both to remember this was your idea." They followed the tracks northwest into the mountains, a strange party united by necessity. Naomi led, reading signs invisible to others. Blackwood served as rear guard, rifle ready. Prescott and Clara May rode in the middle, with Dusty moving uneasily beside them. The higher they climbed, the more Clara May recognized Naomi's skill. The Shoshone woman spotted disturbances Clara May would have missed: a broken pine needle, displaced snow, the faintest impression in frozen mud. "They're organized," Naomi said, crouching to examine what looked like ordinary snow to Clara May. "They split here, 3 west, 2 north. Military scatter protocol," Clara May nodded. They're thinking like soldiers. Or they're being directed by one, Blackwood added grimly. The group paused at a ridge overlooking a steep valley. Dusty grew increasingly agitated, ears flicking, nostrils flaring. He's sensing something, Clara May said. He was trained to recognize Iron Brand scents. You trust that horse more than us, don't you? Blackwood asked, not unkindly. Clara May met his gaze. He's never been wrong, and he's never betrayed me. For 3 hours they followed Dusty's lead, the Mustang choosing paths that sometimes contradicted the visible tracks. Each time, they'd eventually discover signs confirming his route was correct. The creatures were using false trails. The temperature dropped as afternoon shadows lengthened. Wind whipped between rock formations, carrying the promise of another storm. Naomi stopped suddenly, raising her hand for silence. We're being watched, she whispered. Clara May scanned the ridgeline above them, seeing nothing. But Dusty had gone completely still, ears forward, refusing to advance further. Beyond the ridge, metal glinted in the fading light, structures that had no business existing in this wilderness, man-made, recent. Wade, Clara May breathed, the name like ice in her veins. He's been here all along. They approached the facility with extreme caution. What appeared to be an abandoned mine entrance concealed a sophisticated operation. Military-grade camouflage netting, hidden sensors that Clara May identified and disabled, and fresh tracks everywhere. Course of engineers' work, she whispered, examining a concealed door mechanism. But with modifications, someone with clearance and resources. Government-sanctioned? Blackwood asked. Not officially. Black budget operations, deniable if discovered. Inside, the rough mine tunnels gave way to sterile corridors with electric lighting. Clara May moved with practiced efficiency, her military training evident in every silent step. They found laboratories, living quarters, and most disturbing, a large room filled with empty cages. These are recent, Naomi said, crouching to examine dried blood on the floor. Blood hasn't fully dried. Blackwood discovered a separate chamber with operating tables and restraints. What in God's name were they doing here? Clara May's face remained impassive, but her hands trembled slightly as she rifled through documents on a nearby desk. They're not just continuing the program, they've improved it. She recognized Wade's handwriting immediately. The precise lettering, the methodical documentation. Diagrams showed new control devices, more sophisticated than what she'd helped design. Notes detailed successful integration and field deployment protocols. Prescott examined a wall of maps with marked locations. They're mapping the entire territory. Cataloging water sources, settlements, ranches. Preparing for something bigger, Clara May confirmed, dread settling in her stomach. The telegraph machine in the corner suddenly clicked to life. Clara May moved instinctively, transcribing the coded message with military precision. The blood drained from her face as she translated. Military code, she whispered. I recognize the pattern. Wade isn't just hunting us, he's planning to make an example of the entire town tonight. Prescott checked his pocket watch. 3 hours until nightfall. We need to warn them, Blackwood said, already heading for the exit. They rode hard through the gathering darkness, taking a treacherous hunter's path Blackwood knew. Normal trails would be too slow, and they had precious little time. The temperature plummeted as night approached, and clouds threatened snow. These creatures, Prescott called over the wind. How do we fight them? Head or spine, Clara May answered. The control devices suppress pain, but structural damage still works. They're fast, so don't let them get close. Blackwood led them down a steep ravine, navigating terrain Clara May would have deemed impassable. Her military training screamed to take command, to establish order, but she forced herself to follow. This was his territory. "If we're separated," Naomi demonstrated a two-note whistle, "use this signal. It carries without revealing position." "Military precision from a bird call," Clara May nodded approvingly. "Impressive." As darkness fell completely, they relied increasingly on their horses' instincts. Dusty moved with uncanny confidence, sometimes choosing paths invisible to human eyes. When they paused briefly to rest the mounts, Clara May found herself beside Blackwood. "Why are you helping?" she asked quietly. "You barely know me." He checked his rifle methodically before answering. "Lost my wife to mountain fever 2 years back. Doctor couldn't get through because the pass was blocked." He met her eyes in the darkness. "Sometimes helping strangers is the only way to make sense of what can't be fixed." Clara May nodded, understanding more than she could express. Before she could respond, Dusty tensed, ears swiveling toward something in the darkness. A low, rhythmic clicking sound carried on the wind. The communication code she'd helped develop for the hybrids. They crested the final ridge as complete darkness enveloped them, the lights of Coyote Bluff twinkling below. But even from this distance, they could see shapes moving at the town's perimeter, too large for wolves, too nimble for men. "We're too late," Prescott whispered. "No," Clara May said, checking her pistol. "We're right on time." Clara May burst into the crowded town hall where frightened citizens had gathered. Snowfall had intensified, the beginnings of another blizzard, but the real threat lurked at the town's edges. Whispers ceased as she entered, followed by Prescott, Blackwood, and Naomi. "We have less than an hour," Clara May announced, her voice carrying the authority of command. A dozen faces turned to her, expressions ranging from fear to outright hostility. "Why should we believe government monsters are coming for us?" demanded a burly blacksmith. "Because I helped create the program that made them," Clara May replied evenly, "and I know the man who controls them." Widow Jenkins stepped forward from the crowd. In her 50s, she commanded respect through quiet dignity rather than force. "I've known trouble coming before. This woman's eyes have the same look my husband's had before the Apache raid of '71. I'm listening to her." Clara May nodded gratefully and spread a town map on the central table. With precise movements, she marked defensive positions and evacuation routes. Every building needs watchers at all windows. They attack from multiple directions simultaneously. They use darkness and fear. Her finger traced the main street. "Prescott will coordinate the northern defense. Blackwood, take the south approaches." "What about the children?" someone asked. "Widow Jenkins' hotel has a stone cellar. Move everyone who can't fight there now." Clara May looked up, meeting each gaze in turn. "These creatures feel no pain, follow military attack patterns, and communicate through coded sounds. Aim for the head or spine. Nothing else will stop them." "And where will you be during all this?" challenged a skeptical rancher. Clara May checked her pistol methodically. "Wherever they attack hardest. We have 3 hours to prepare. Everyone has a position. Everyone has a job. No exceptions." As the townspeople dispersed to their assigned positions, the first howl echoed across the valley, not quite wolf, not quite human, and carrying with it a cold promise of what was coming with the storm. The blizzard hit with full force as darkness fell, reducing visibility to arm's length. Clara May positioned herself on the hotel roof where she could survey most of the town. Snow accumulated on her hat and shoulders as she scanned for movement in the swirling white. The attack began without warning. Shadows detached from the night, moving with coordinated precision toward the town's perimeter. Clara May fired a warning shot, the signal they'd arranged. "They're using a pincer movement," she shouted down to Prescott. "Shore up the east barricade." Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Through breaks in the snow, Clara May glimpsed the creatures, more than she'd expected. 8, perhaps 10, moving with frightening speed. Their eyes reflected lantern light like mirrors, their forms a nightmarish blend of wolf and human. "Too many coming from the north," Blackwood's voice carried through the storm. "That's a diversion," Clara May called back. "Main force will hit from—" The sound of shattering glass from the general store confirmed her prediction. "The east, exactly as I feared." She slid down the hotel roof and dropped to the street, rolling to absorb the impact. 2 creatures had broken through the defensive line. Clara May fired twice, catching one in the spine. It collapsed, still clawing forward through the snow. The second leaped for her with impossible strength. Dusty appeared from nowhere, rearing and striking with precision. His hooves connected with the creature's chest, driving it back. Other horses had followed his lead, forming an unexpected cavalry that disrupted the hybrid's formation. For 20 chaotic minutes, the battle raged through blinding snow. Clara May moved from position to position, shouting orders, identifying patterns in the attack. The creatures communicated through clicks and whistles she recognized, Iron Brand code signals. She used this knowledge to anticipate their movements. Blackwood fought with grim efficiency, his rifle finding targets even in the whiteout conditions. Naomi used her knowledge of the terrain to set traps that funneled creatures into prepared killing zones. Prescott rallied the townspeople, his military experience evident in his calm coordination. Gradually, the attack weakened. 3 hybrids lay dead in the snow. The others retreated into the darkness, their withdrawal as coordinated as their assault. As dawn broke, the blizzard began to ease, revealing a town scarred but standing. Clara May counted casualties. 1 dead townsman, several wounded, but most had survived. Her moment of relief shattered when a rider appeared on the ridge, Thomas's ranch hand, his face bloody. "They hit the sanctuary while we defended the town," he gasped. "It's all gone." The sanctuary lay in ruins. Barn collapsed, fences destroyed, outbuildings still smoldering despite the snow. Clara May stood amidst the devastation, her face impassive, but her hands trembling slightly. Most of her horses had scattered or been killed. Only Dusty and 3 others remained. 3 years of work, she said, voice controlled. Destroyed in one night. "You saved the town," Thomas said quietly, standing beside her. "At what cost? These horses survived hell once already." "You did what had to be done." Clara May surveyed the destruction with a tactician's eye. "Did I? Or did I make exactly the choice Wade knew I would make?" This hadn't been random destruction. Each building had been targeted with precision. Feed stores burned, water troughs contaminated, medication supplies destroyed. The attack on town had been a diversion, exactly as she would have planned it herself. Thomas worked silently, removing dead horses from Clara May's path as she methodically checked each structure. Dusty stood guard over the body of another horse, one of the sanctuary's oldest residents. The Mustang's grief was as palpable as Clara May's contained rage. In her partially destroyed office, Clara May found what she feared most. Her military trunk had been broken open, its contents scattered. The prototype control device was gone. Wade now had everything he needed. As she turned to leave, She spotted something pinned to her cabin door with a military dagger she recognized. Wade's personal weapon. A note written in his precise handwriting. "You can save what remains," it read. "Surrender yourself and the Mustang by sunset tomorrow, or the town burns next." Clara May knelt among the scattered papers in her destroyed office, piecing together what remained of her records. Thomas had gone to check the perimeter, leaving her alone with her thoughts. A particular document caught her eye, a laboratory record she hadn't seen before, apparently left deliberately. Her hands trembled as she read the identification number, ST-7734. Shadow's designation in the Iron Brand program. "Impossible," she whispered. According to the breeding records, Shadow was alive. The document detailed his use in creating more enhanced animals over the past 3 years. Detailed notes on genetic compatibility, behavioral conditioning, combat efficiency. Dusty entered the ruined office, moving directly to the document in Clara May's hands. His reaction was immediate, ears forward, nostrils flared, a soft nickering sound she'd never heard before. "You sense him, don't you?" Clara May asked, watching the Mustang's behavior. "You know he's alive," Thomas returned, pausing in the doorway as he observed the scene. "What is it?" "Shadow's alive," Clara May said, voice tight with emotion. "Wade's been using him to breed more hybrids." "The horse you said died years ago?" "We never found his body. Just blood." She looked at Dusty's reaction. "And Dusty knows. He can sense his brother." "Brother?" "They were enhanced together." Shared pain creates bonds humans can't understand. Clara May stood in the ruins of her life's work, Wade's ultimatum in one hand, Shadow's records in the other. "He doesn't just want me," she said quietly. "He wants to complete what he started with Dusty and Shadow, and he'll burn everything in his path to get it." The town hall was packed tighter than the previous night, but the mood had transformed from fear to anger. Clara May stood before the gathering, back straight despite her exhaustion, Wade's ultimatum folded in her pocket. Hostile glares met her from every direction. "1 man dead, 4 injured," announced a shopkeeper, pointing an accusatory finger. "You brought this devil's work down on us." "I came to warn you," Clara May began. "After leading them straight to our town," someone interrupted from the back. Widow Jenkins stepped forward again. "She saved most of you ungrateful fools." Marshal Prescott raised his hands for order. "This isn't helping anyone. We need to decide our next move." "Our next move?" A rancher stood, his arm bandaged from the previous night's attack. "Those things killed my best hand, and now they're demanding we hand over the woman who created them." Clara May didn't correct him, though the simplification stung. She understood their anger. To them, she represented a threat they couldn't comprehend, part of the same military machine that had created the monsters. "I understand your anger," she said evenly. "But Wade won't stop with me. The program was always about control of animals, territory, people. If you give him what he wants, he'll only demand more." "Maybe we should let the army handle this," suggested another voice. "Send for the cavalry." Clara May shook her head. "Wade has powerful protection, military backing. By the time any investigation starts, there won't be a town left." The debate continued for another hour, growing increasingly heated. Finally, Prescott called for a vote. Clara May watched as hands raised one by one, the decision nearly unanimous. Clara May Hollister was to leave Coyote Bluff by morning, taking her problems with her. As she walked through the parting crowd, heads turned away, doors closed, all except Thomas Blackwood, who followed her into the fading light. They sat on Widow Jenkins' back porch, the only person who'd offered Clara May shelter for the night. Thomas sat across from her, his expression unreadable in the lantern light. For several minutes, neither spoke. "I need to know everything if I'm going to help you," he finally said. "No more half-truths." Clara May studied him, weighing her options. 3 years of isolation had made trust nearly impossible. But she'd seen Thomas fight, seen his quiet competence and unspoken understanding. "I wasn't just Wade's lieutenant," she began, each word carefully measured. "I helped design the control devices. And then? Then I saw what they did to the animals. The pain." Clara May's voice remained level, but her eyes reflected remembered horrors. "When I objected, Wade had me strung up as a demonstration to others, said I'd developed unnecessary empathy for test subjects. But you escaped." Clara May touched her ankle where the rope scars formed a permanent bracelet. "Dusty found me. The one creature they couldn't fully control saved me." "What exactly did these control devices do?" "Enhanced intelligence, strength, obedience. They could make animals follow complex commands, communicate through coded signals, operate with military precision." She looked away. "The animals remained conscious throughout, aware of everything being done to them, but unable to resist." Thomas was silent, processing. "And Wade wants Dusty now because he's the only one who ever broke conditioning. Wade can't stand that something he created chose freedom. What about this shadow? Dusty's brother, enhanced together. Shadow fought the control more violently, damaged himself trying to break free. We thought he died during my escape. And now he's being used to create more hybrids." Clara May had expected judgment, even disgust. Instead, Thomas simply nodded. "So that's why you can't run again," he said, "even if it might save you." Pre-dawn light filtered through the stable windows as Clara May quietly saddled Pepper, a bay mare she'd rescued from a neglectful owner. Her movements were methodical, military precise, each buckle and strap perfectly placed. Dusty watched from his stall, unusually silent. "It's just me going, Pepper," she explained softly. "Dusty stays free." On a small table lay a sealed letter for Thomas, explaining her decision. Wade wanted her and Dusty by sunset. She would go alone, buy the town time to evacuate, maybe negotiate terms. It was the logical, tactical approach. She finished saddling Pepper and reached for her saddlebags, then froze. Dusty had somehow opened his stall and now blocked the stable door, his stance unmistakable. He wasn't moving. "Move aside," Clara May ordered. "This is my choice." Dusty remained immovable, dark eyes fixed on hers. "Don't you understand? They'll destroy everything, kill everyone." Her control slipped, frustration breaking through her careful discipline. "What's one life against a town? Against your freedom?" The Mustang shifted position, deliberately nudging a board that had fallen from the wall. Clara May glanced down and felt her chest tighten. It was the sanctuary's sign, the words she'd carved herself 3 years ago. Freedom must be chosen. "But what if the cost is too high?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Dusty approached slowly, pressing his scarred muzzle against her shoulder. For the first time in years, Clara May's military composure crumbled. She wrapped her arms around his neck, shoulders shaking with silent tears. A knock at the stable door startled them both. Clara May quickly composed herself, wiping her eyes with practiced efficiency. "Lieutenant Hollister," came an unfamiliar voice. "My name is Dr. Wilson. I worked on the control devices for Iron Brand, and I know how to disrupt them." Clara May exchanged a glance with Dusty, her resolve hardening. "Well, Doctor," she said, opening the door, "you've arrived just in time." Widow Jenkins's cellar smelled of preserved apples and root vegetables. Lantern light cast long shadows as Clara May studied the man before her. Doc Wilson was in his 60s, thin and stooped, with hands that trembled slightly, whether from age or guilt she couldn't tell. "You helped create the control devices," Clara May said. "Not a question." Wilson nodded. "Neurological interface design. I believed we were helping soldiers communicate with animal assets. By the time I understood Wade's true intentions, I was in too deep." Clara May introduced him to the others, Thomas, Naomi, Prescott, and Widow Jenkins. Each regarded the newcomer with varying degrees of suspicion. "The control signal has a specific frequency," Wilson explained, sketching on paper. "Disrupt it, and the creatures become independent again." "Can we build something to broadcast interference?" Clara May asked, military mind already calculating applications. "With the right parts, yes. The telegraph office would have components I need." Naomi leaned forward, studying Wilson's drawings. "My people use certain minerals that affect the mind. They might amplify your device." "Lodestone," Wilson nodded. "Yes, that could enhance the signal strength significantly." Clara May turned to Thomas. "Thoughts on approach?" He looked momentarily surprised at being consulted, but recovered quickly. "We need a direct path to Wade's facility. I know these mountains better than anyone." Prescott examined the rough map they'd drawn of Wade's compound. "What about defenses?" "Standard military protocol," Clara May replied. "Guards, probably enhanced animals on patrol. We'd need a distraction." "The town could provide that," Widow Jenkins offered. "Not everyone voted against you. Many are just scared." Clara May nodded, watching the group work together with new appreciation. 3 years of isolation had taught her self-reliance, but this was strength of a different kind. The cellar door opened suddenly, revealing James Quick-Draw Reeves, a mercenary known to work for the highest bidder. Before anyone could draw, he raised empty hands. "I worked for Wade," he said. "But that was before I saw what he did to your friend Blackwood when he caught him scouting the facility." The room froze, all eyes shifting from Quick-Draw to Clara May. She showed no reaction, though her hand moved imperceptibly closer to her pistol. "Explain," she said, voice dangerously calm. "Blackwood's been gone 3 days," Quick-Draw said, remaining in the doorway. "Wade's men caught him mapping guard positions at the facility, fought like hell, took down 3 men before they overwhelmed him." "Is he alive?" Clara May's voice remained steady, but Thomas's absence suddenly made terrible sense. She'd assumed he was checking his ranch, helping his hands recover from the attacks. Wade doesn't waste potential leverage. He's alive, but won't be comfortable. Quick-Draw took a cautious step forward. "I was hired to track you, but this—" He shook his head. "There are lines even I won't cross." "Why are you telling us this?" Widow Jenkins demanded. "Because Blackwood said something while they were beating him. Said you'd remember Echo Canyon, where freedom must be chosen. Meant nothing to them. Meant something to me." Clara May exchanged a glance with Naomi, who gave a nearly imperceptible nod. The Shoshone woman had remarkable instincts for truth and deception. "Wade's deadline is sunset tomorrow," Clara May said. "Is Thomas bait?" "Part of it." Quick-Draw approached the table, laying down a crude map. "Wade's moved his operation deeper into the mountains. They're holding Blackwood here." His finger indicated a section of the compound. "Same wing where they keep the black Mustang." Clara May's breath caught. Shadow! That's what they call it. Most vicious thing I've ever seen. Taken 8 men to control it for the experiments. Clara May studied the map, mind racing through possibilities. Wade's holding Thomas in the same wing as Shadow, she said quietly. He's made this personal, and that's his first mistake. The others watched as something shifted in her expression. A soldier preparing for war. Night fell as they finalized their plan. Wilson and Naomi worked in one corner, combining telegraph components with Shoshone medicine to create the disruption device. Prescott and Widow Jenkins planned the town's role as distraction. Clara May stood apart, staring at nothing, until Quick Draw approached. "There's something you should know about Blackwood," he said quietly. Clara May turned, expression guarded. Wade didn't just capture him by chance. Blackwood's been watching that facility for months. Quick Draw met her gaze directly. He lost someone to Iron Brand, too, a brother who volunteered for what he thought was standard cavalry service. Clara May absorbed this information, pieces falling into place. Thomas's immediate willingness to help, his understanding of her guilt, his acceptance without judgment. Does Wade know this connection? No. Blackwood's been careful. She nodded, turning back to the group. Our plan has 3 phases, she announced. First, Wilson's device disrupts the control signals. Second, town forces create a diversion at the main entrance. Third, our team infiltrates through the mining shaft Quick Draw identified. What about the hybrids? Prescott asked. Without control signals, they'll be disoriented, confused. Some may turn on their handlers. And Shadow? Naomi asked, intuiting the piece Clara May hadn't mentioned. Clara May looked at Dusty, who had remained unnaturally still throughout the planning. Dusty and Shadow share a connection. Wade never understood. If we get Dusty close enough while the signals are disrupted. You think Shadow will help us? Wilson looked skeptical. I think Shadow has been fighting Wade's control for 3 years. Clara May's voice softened. Some bonds can't be broken by technology or torture. Dusty approached her, pressing his muzzle against her hand in silent communication. Clara May felt a certainty she couldn't explain, a trust in something beyond military strategy or tactical advantage. Dawn tomorrow, she said, looking at each ally in turn. We move at first light. Dawn painted the mountains gold as Clara May's team approached Wade's facility. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, covering their tracks almost immediately, nature's gift to their mission. Clara May led Dusty on foot, the Mustang unusually subdued. Behind them came Naomi, Wilson, and Quick Draw, each carrying components of the disruption device. The mining shaft entrance lay hidden behind a stand of pines, seemingly abandoned, but for the fresh tracks Clara May identified, guard patrols, regular intervals, military precision. 4 guards rotate every 30 minutes, Quick Draw whispered. Next change in 5. Clara May nodded, checking her weapons one final time. The weight of her service pistol felt familiar again after years of avoiding it. Wilson, status? The older man adjusted dials on the contraption they'd assembled, part telegraph equipment, part Shoshone medicine. Copper wire wrapped around lodestone cores, all connected to a hand-cranked generator. Ready? Once activated, we'll have perhaps 15 minutes before they trace the signal. And the town distraction? Prescott will lead a visible force to the main entrance at exactly 0700, Quick Draw confirmed. 3 minutes from now. Clara May turned to Dusty, pressing her forehead briefly against his. You know what to do, she murmured. The Mustang's eyes, intelligent beyond any natural horse, held her gaze with unmistakable understanding. The guard change came exactly when predicted. Clara May moved first, silent from years of military training. 2 quick blows, and the guard was unconscious, dragged into shadow without raising alarm. She signaled the others forward. The mining tunnel sloped downward, rough-hewn walls giving way to reinforced military construction. Electric lights hummed overhead, a luxury in these mountains, evidence of Wade's resources. Clara May navigated by memory, following the layout Quick Draw had provided. Distant shouts and gunfire signaled Prescott's distraction had begun. Clara May increased their pace, moving deeper into the facility. They encountered 2 more guards. Quick Draw handled one, Clara May the other, both without raising alarm. Finally, they reached a junction where the tunnel split. One path led to the laboratories, the other to the containment wing where Thomas and Shadow were held. "Here," Wilson whispered, setting up the device in the junction. "This location will affect both sections." Clara May nodded. "Activate it," she ordered, drawing her pistol. "It's time." The disruption device hummed to life, its strange combination of technology and traditional medicine creating a vibration felt more than heard. Wilson turned the crank steadily, building power. "Go," Clara May instructed Naomi and Quick Draw. "Find Thomas. We'll handle Shadow." The containment wing stank of blood and fear. Cages lined the walls, some containing hybrid creatures that writhed and thrashed as the disruption signal affected their control devices. Clara May moved past them, Dusty following close behind, both focused on the large reinforced door at the corridor's end. Colonel Jeremiah Wade stood waiting as if he'd anticipated their exact path. Tall and imposing despite his age, the military scientist leaned on a cane, his legacy from Gettysburg. His smile remained as Clara May remembered it, clinical, devoid of humanity. "Lieutenant Hollister," he greeted her as if welcoming an expected guest. "Bringing my property back at last." Clara May leveled her pistol. "It's over, Wade. Your control signals are being disrupted as we speak." "Temporary inconvenience?" He seemed unconcerned, eyes fixed on Dusty. "ST-7733. My greatest success and most disappointing failure." Did you know his brain capacity increased nearly 3-fold under the treatments? "His name is Dusty," Clara May said evenly, "and he doesn't belong to you or anyone else." Wade laughed softly, still clinging to sentimentality. "This is why you were unsuitable for the program's final phase." He gestured behind him. "Perhaps you'd like to see your friends." The door opened, revealing Thomas bound to a chair, bruised but conscious. Beside him stood Shadow, a black Mustang, larger than Dusty, covered in scars, eyes burning with barely contained fury. Metal gleamed from his skull, where a new control device had been implanted. "Thomas," Clara May acknowledged, maintaining her aim on Wade. "Right on time, Lieutenant," Thomas managed through split lips. Wade produced a small controller from his pocket. One button deactivates his control device, another activates maximum pain stimulation. "Choose which I press." "There's a third option," Clara May replied. "Dusty?" The gray Mustang moved forward slowly, approaching his brother for the first time in 3 years. Shadow's ears flattened, his posture aggressive, fighting the control device even as it commanded him. The disruption signal intensified as Wilson increased power. Shadow shuddered, caught between programming and recognition. Dusty nickered softly, a sound meant only for his brother. Wade pressed his controller frantically. "Attack! ST-7734, attack!" Shadow reared suddenly, not toward Dusty or Clara May, but toward Wade himself. With terrifying precision, the black Mustang's hooves struck the controller from Wade's hand, then his chest, driving him against the wall. Clara May rushed to free Thomas, while Dusty and Shadow communicated in ways humans couldn't understand. The brothers had chosen their own freedom. 1 year later, Clara May stood on the porch of the rebuilt Echo Mustang Division Sanctuary, watching the spring grass ripple across the valley. Thomas worked with a young colt nearby, his patient hands guiding rather than commanding. "The Army investigation officially closed Iron Brand yesterday," he said, joining her with coffee mugs in hand. "Your testimony and Wilson's evidence ensured Wade's research will never be continued." Clara May nodded, accepting the coffee. "And the hybrids? Most have been rehabilitated here or in similar sanctuaries. The control devices have all been removed." Thomas smiled. "Your methods work better anyway." "Freedom must be chosen," she said, the sanctuary's motto now recognized throughout the territory. Control only creates the illusion of safety. The sanctuary had grown in the year since Wade's downfall. With Prescott's support and Widow Jenkins' social connections, donations had poured in. Naomi now served as their veterinary expert, combining traditional knowledge with Wilson's scientific approach. Even Quick Draw had found purpose as their head of security. Clara May's military nightmares had faded, though the rope scars remained. She'd learned to trust again, not just Thomas, who now shared her life as well as her work, but the community that had eventually embraced her mission. "Look," Thomas said quietly, pointing toward the northern ridge. A small herd of horses watched from the distance, led by a powerful black Mustang. Though Shadow had never returned to captivity, he visited occasionally, watching over the sanctuary from afar. Clara May smiled as Dusty nickered in greeting to his brother. Some wounds never fully healed, but in freedom, even scars could become strength. "Well, partner, we've ridden a hard trail together through some of the most wounded corners of a human heart. If you're feeling a bit raw from all we've witnessed, Clara May's guilt, Shadow's captivity, the weight of choosing between surrender and resistance, I understand completely. Telling this story has left me changed in ways I'm still discovering, and I suspect Clara May Hollister's journey might have stirred something in you too. There's something about the frontier that strips away our defenses and forces us to confront our deepest truths." Clara May spent 3 years isolating herself, convinced her participation in Iron Brand had defined her forever. But redemption isn't about erasing our mistakes. It's about finding the courage to make different choices when the next test comes. And it always comes, doesn't it? That moment when we must choose between control and freedom, between fear and trust, between what's safe and what's right. What struck me most while writing Clara May's story was how her need for control nearly destroyed her, while trust ultimately saved her. We aren't meant to carry our burdens alone, especially the burden of past mistakes. Thomas, Naomi, even Dusty, they didn't just need Clara May's protection. They gave her something to believe in again. Sometimes those we're trying to save end up saving us instead. Writing about the bond between Clara May and Dusty got me thinking about trust in our own time. We may not face government experiments or hybrid creatures, but we all encounter moments that test our ability to trust after betrayal. The colleague who violated our confidence, the institution that failed its mission, the relationship that left scars deeper than any rope burn. Clara May's Wyoming might be long gone, but the choice between control and trust remains as relevant as tomorrow's sunrise. In the end, Clara May learned what the frontier has always taught those brave enough to listen. We're not defined by our worst mistakes, but by what we do after them. Freedom isn't just about breaking restraints. It's about choosing connection even when it terrifies us, one difficult step at a time. Thank you for riding this trail with me, friend. Stories only come alive when they find readers willing to invest their hearts in scarred characters trying to become whole. Your willingness to follow Clara May from her isolated sanctuary to that final confrontation is what transforms mere words into something that matters. Clara May's story got me thinking about the wounds we carry, those scars that remind us of our past mistakes and betrayals. We all bear marks of some kind, and we all face moments when trusting others feels more frightening than facing danger alone. What's the hardest time you've had to trust someone after being hurt? Share your story in the comments below, because real healing deserves to be honored, whether it happened on the frontier or in your own life today. If Clara May's journey from control to trust stirred something in your spirit, I'd be grateful if you'd hit that like button and consider subscribing. The West is full of stories about wounded souls finding their way back to connection, and I'd be honored to share more of them with you. Until next time, may your bonds be strong and your spirit as free as a Mustang running wild across the Wyoming plains.